Good to see you again. I'm Laah Hyun-kyung in Seoul. You're watching ARIRANG News. We start with North Korea. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff says Pyongyang fired off 7 surface-to-air missiles into the East Sea yesterday. That's Thursday afternoon. Officials say the launch is likely to have been in protest against the ongoing South Korea-U.S. military drills and that they were fired from Seondok, South Hamkyong Province. One official reportedly noted that the Joint Chiefs of Staff believes North Korean leader Kim Jong-un observed the launch. The South Korean military has upped its readiness for additional provocations from the north and through the ongoing drills is seeking to strengthen its military alliance with Washington. Now, South Korea has been asking North Korea to talk about the regime's unilateral decision to increase wages for workers at the inter-Korean Kaesong industrial complex, with Pyongyang saying the hike was legitimate. Some observers say this could lead to another shutdown at the factory zone. ARIRANG's Kim has more.
Tensions are brewing over the Kaesong industrial complex as South Korea's offered deadline for talks over North Korea's unilateral decision to raise workers' wages at the complex expires on Friday. Last month, North Korea decided to up its workers' minimum monthly wage by 5% to $74. To this announcement, South Korea remained firm, calling on the North to come forward for discussions over wages. Seoul also said that unless the two sides reach an agreement, it would penalize South Korean companies complying with the wage hike. South Korean operators at Kaesong have expressed concerns that a wage increase could affect their business. But a day before the deadline, Pyongyang said the wage hike is a legitimate and normal exercise of its legislative rights, adding that it has no intention of negotiating with Seoul over its decision. Some worry the tug-of-war could lead to a shutdown similar to what happened in 2013. But others say Pyongyang has too much to lose for another halt.
North Korea is trying to get the upper hand over Seoul in regards to decisions at the Kaesong complex. It may also be trying to earn more foreign currency by enforcing the wage hike.
Since opening in 2004, the Kaesong industrial complex has been a symbol of inter-Korean economic cooperation and a significant source of income for the North. Experts forecast inter-Korean talks over wages at Kaesong could start once the joint South Korea-U.S. military drills wrap up in April. Kim, ARIRANG News.
And going back to the military drills between South Korea and the U.S., they wrapped up one part of the annual joint military exercises taking place this month. Key Resolve is the one that came to a close this morning. It's a computerized command post drill involving some 10,000 South Korean troops and 8,600 American forces. Full Eagle, which will run until April 24th, is a field training exercise involving more than 200,000 troops from Seoul and Washington. They perform a set of land, sea, and air maneuvers with the 3,000-ton combat ship USS Fort Worth participating for the first time this year. Pyongyang claims the drills are a rehearsal for war, while South Korea and the U.S. maintain that they are aimed at defending possible provocations from the north. In the meantime, the U.S. has once again made it clear that no decision has been made about the possible deployment of a U.S. missile defense system called THAAD to the Korean peninsula. U.S. Forces Korea did admit, however, that informal surveys have been conducted to find a suitable location if the missile shield were to be deployed in the future. That came after a Korean daily reported that the U.S. had identified 3 candidate sites. The possible deployment is a highly controversial topic as it affects security issues with the neighboring countries. The South Korean government says no talks have been held on the issue with Washington and that it plans to establish its own missile defense system by the year 2020. Russia is set to hold a ceremony in May commemorating the end of World War II, but an increasing number of Western leaders are boycotting the event, citing Moscow's involvement in the current Ukraine crisis. One of the latest figures to join that move is British Prime Minister David Cameron. Here's ARIRANG's Hwang Sung-hee.
British Prime Minister David Cameron has joined the growing list of Western leaders boycotting Russia's Victory Day parade in May. His official spokeswoman said Thursday local time that Britain will consider its representation in Moscow on May 9th in light of its concerns about their activities, adding there are no plans for Cameron to attend. This just a day after German Chancellor Angela Merkel said she will skip the ceremony, citing Russian actions in Crimea and eastern Ukraine. The annual event marking the end of World War II has served as a symbol for East-West reconciliation in the past, with leaders from the U.S., Germany, and other Western countries honoring the estimated 20 million Soviet lives lost in the war with Nazi Germany. U.S. President Barack Obama's spokesman said earlier this year that he too will stay away. A handful of Eastern European leaders, anxious about Russian expansionism, have also rejected Moscow's invitation. For now, the most prominent confirmed guests, according to the Kremlin, will be Chinese President Xi Jinping and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Kim's attendance in Moscow, his first overseas trip since assuming power in 2011, will be another show of the cozy ties between Russia and North Korea. The two recently designated 2015 as a year of friendship, promising expanded political, economic, and cultural cooperation. But analysts say Russia's blossoming relationship with North Korea will only deepen its isolation from the West. Hwang Sang-hee, ARIRANG News.
Senior officials from Korea and Japan will meet next week for more talks aimed at resolving the issue of Tokyo's wartime sexual enslavement of Korean women. The Foreign Ministry says Korea's chief delegate Lee Seondok will meet with his Japanese counterpart Junichi Ihara in Seoul on Monday. It will be the 7th meeting of its kind, but the two sides have yet to make any substantial progress on the highly sensitive subject. Seoul has called on Tokyo to take sincere steps to compensate the aging victims, but Japan keeps saying the matter was settled through a bilateral treaty signed in 1965. The talks come just days ahead of the first trilateral foreign ministers meeting between Korea, China, and Japan in 3 years. And that highly sensitive subject was discussed at a UN forum on Thursday in New York. Participants there called for stronger measures to bring those found guilty of wartime sex crimes to justice. Among those taking part is the former UN Special Rapporteur Gay McDougall, who's calling on world leaders to show a determination to resolve the issue. McDougall suggested the UN give more diverse opportunities to active individuals and civic groups for the cause of women's rights. The forum is held to raise awareness about Japan's wartime atrocities, including its sexual enslavement of tens of thousands of Asian women. Now, the Syrian civil war is now in its 5th year, and a new UN-backed report shows the bleak reality of ordinary citizens struggling to hang on. The study showed that the war involving both the Syrian government and the Islamic State group has cut life expectancy in the country by 20 years to less than 56 years. It also found that 80% of Syrians live in poverty amid, quote, obliterated institutions and infrastructure. Meanwhile, a UNICEF representative has warned that the country risks losing an entire generation of children, with the number of children suffering from the devastating conflict nearing 15 million. Several aid groups have criticized the UN for not applying its own resolutions, which authorize UN aid missions to enter Syria without the government's permission. A high-ranking Turkish official says the 3 British schoolgirls believed to have joined the Islamic State group in Syria are helped by a foreign spy. In an interview with local media, the Turkish foreign minister said authorities had recently detained the spy. He did not specify the country the foreign spy was from, but did note that it was not the U.S. nor an EU country. The Canadian government has denied reports that it was one of its intelligence agents. And moving over to the U.S., tensions are running high in Ferguson after the shooting of two police officers. Authorities said the shooter, still at large, pointed the barrel at his subjects simply because they were uniformed officers. The manhunt for the attacker continues. Our Son Jung-in has the story.
It was around midnight Wednesday local time when at least 3 gunshots broke out outside police headquarters in Ferguson as a group of demonstrators was beginning to disperse after a peaceful rally. The shootings left 2 police officers wounded, one in the face and the other in the shoulder. Both officers have been released after being treated at a local hospital and are expected to make a full recovery. U.S. President Barack Obama and Attorney General Eric Holder have both condemned the shooting, which Holder called an ambush, and have promised to hold the perpetrators accountable.
What happened last night was a pure ambush. This was not someone trying to bring healing to Ferguson. This was a damn punk, who was trying to sow discord in an area that is trying to get its act together.
A manhunt for those responsible is ongoing. Several people have already been brought in for questioning, but no suspects have been named and no arrests made. The incident took place as demonstrators gathered at Ferguson Police Headquarters to demand changes in law enforcement practices following a scathing report by the Justice Department that found widespread racial discrimination within the city's police force and court system. Ferguson has been at the center of racial tensions in America following the shooting death of 18-year-old Michael Brown triggered nationwide demonstrations last year. Son Jung-in, ARIRANG News.
The broadcasting industry is a comprehensive package of everything related to a creative economy. That's what President Park Geun-hye said at a ceremony marking the 20th anniversary of the launch of cable television in Korea. She said the industry sits at the center of a convergence of the arts and culture, video art, and information and communications technology, adding that merging Korean culture with world-class ICT will help the cable TV industry become Korea's next growth engine. The president also said rapid technological developments in the ICT arena and intensifying media competition call for creativity and innovation in the industry. And on the economic front, the weakening Korean won against the greenback and a pickup in global oil prices led to a rebound in both export and import prices last month. The Bank of Korea says export prices went up by 1.5% in February from a month earlier, while import prices rose nearly 3%. Prices of imported goods were up for the first time in a year, a sign that a downward pressure on inflation might be easing. However, analysts are skeptical as to whether that rebound will be sustained, as expectations over a rate hike in the U.S. in the coming months are putting downward pressure on global crude prices. Korea is looking into introducing a new system that will push industries to share the benefits of free trade deals, including that with China. The Agriculture Ministry says a research is currently ongoing to evaluate the effects of that scheme. Under the planned measure, the government will collect some of the profits from industries that benefit from the trade pact and use it to support sectors like farming and fisheries that are more likely to take a hit by the FTAs. The government is expected to make its final decision sometime after June. Now, if you remember, late last year, we reported on the hacker who leaked sensitive information about Korea's nuclear power plants. The hacker remained silent for a few months, but came back on Thursday demanding money in exchange for not selling the hacked data to other countries. Our Jiyeon has this report.
The hacker that threatened to shut down Korea's nuclear facilities last year has come back with a fresh threat. Using the same Twitter account, the hacker demanded money and warned that countries in Northern Europe, Southeast Asia, and South America want to buy Korea's nuclear reactor information. No specific amount was mentioned, but the message said nuclear authorities should send an email to the stated address if it's willing to pay the hush money. Along with the threat, more than 20 files were released, including floor maps and an alleged transcript of a phone conversation between President Park Geun-hye and UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. The presidential office of Cheongwade says it won't confirm whether the transcripts are authentic. The state-run Korea Hydro and Nuclear Power Company says it's looking into how the information got leaked and how sensitive the documents are. The threat comes about 3 months after the hacker threatened to destroy power plants if the company didn't halt operations at 3 nuclear facilities by Christmas last year. However, no damage was done even after the deadline passed, and the nuclear power company insisted the released data posed no threat. However, the hacker's comeback is a worry, as he or she still hasn't been identified, even after several weeks of investigation. Jiyeon, ARIRANG News.
Japan's stimulus and monetary easing initiatives have so far fallen short of reviving the country's decades-long economic slump. Tokyo has recently made raising wages a top priority, but will this measure meet expectations? ARIRANG's Kim Min-ji reports.
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has made it a top priority to raise wages, saying that it is the key to success in Abenomics. The aim is to spur domestic consumption with the hope of escaping from a low-growth trap.
Companies need to raise wages and investment and consider the prices they pay their suppliers.
Last year, Japan's large corporations lifted their wages by nearly 2.3% on average, the largest jump in 17 years. About half of listed firms are also considering raising wages by a similar amount this year.
People around me are spending more. I think the wage hike has had a big impact.
The Abe administration has been going all out to sustain the economy's emergence from 2 decades of stagnation, mainly by pumping in more money. Korea has also been taking stimulus measures in the wake of low consumer prices and fears of deflation. The nation's finance minister has vowed to do all he can to prop up the economy, which includes raising wages. Minister Choi Kyung-wan says the U.S. and Japan are pushing companies to raise wages to boost consumption. But some experts warn that caution is needed because the expected benefits may not kick in as seen in Japan so far. Kim Min-ji, ARIRANG News.
68 listed companies, including the affiliates of large conglomerates, held annual shareholders meetings on this Friday. Let's talk about some of the key companies, beginning with Samsung Electronics. After current CEO Kwon Oh-hyun was re-elected for another 3-year term, the company said it will develop a new lineup and enhance strategies for its smartphone division. Hyundai Motor Company says it will consider launching a committee to improve its management structure, as proposed by foreign shareholders who also voiced concerns about the company spending too much money on buying a plot of land in southern Seoul. POSCO, Korea's largest steel maker, told its shareholders that it's close to signing a business cooperation deal with Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund.
Bringing you the fresh updates from stories breaking in Korea and abroad. We give you a bigger and better picture of the world. Join Laah Hyun-kyung live from Seoul. Every weekday, only on ARIRANG.
Korea's extensive anti-corruption bill has entered the final process for becoming a law after passing the Parliament last week. The bill will be reviewed at a cabinet meeting scheduled for next Tuesday, and if it is passed, the president can either sign or veto it. If not vetoed, the bill will be made into law by as early as the 20th, and the law will go into effect after an 18-month grace period. However, the bill has already faced calls for revision from legal experts, the financial sector, and teachers who say it's excessive in its scope. The Korean Bar Association has filed a constitutional complaint against the bill, saying it violates the right to equality and the freedom of the press. Now, the case of Kim Jong-un, the man who assaulted U.S. Ambassador to South Korea Mark Lippert last week, has been sent to prosecutors. Police say Kim faces charges of attempted murder, assaulting a foreign envoy, and obstruction of business. Authorities say they don't have hard evidence yet to charge him with violating the national security law, which prohibits, quote, activities compromising the safety of the state. But they add that based on his testimony, Kim appears to harbor a pro-North Korea attitude and anti-American sentiment. Lippert told police on Thursday that he felt that Kim harbored murderous intent and wants him punished. Police are also investigating whether anyone else was involved in that attack. Now, how many books do you read a month? Reading more books almost never fails to make it onto lists of New Year's resolutions for many Koreans. But the reality is that fewer people are picking up books these days. ARIRANG's Kwon So-ah has this report.
An adult literacy rate of 98%. Roughly 7 out of 10 go to university. But the average household in Korea buys fewer than 1 book a month. Somewhat ironic, but Koreans' interest in reading seems to be fading. Last year, only 5% of Koreans over 13 years old said their favorite hobby was reading. That's down from 8% in 2004.
People are just choosing to spend their money on other things. With the rising amount of academic and work-related stress, they feel the need to release that by entertaining themselves in a more active way than reading.
While spending on culture and entertainment in Korea has risen for 10 straight years, spending on books has decreased steadily for the past 4. The amount of money the average household in Korea spent on books last year slumped to a record low. Paper book sales are down, but with reading via digital devices becoming more common, there is optimism that the trend could push the nation's reading rate back up. One of Korea's major bookstores, Kyobo, has seen a big success in its 2-year e-book service history, as its customers read nearly 15 books a year. But there is skepticism too.
It's hard to say the rise in e-books will reignite Korea's lost love for reading, as the majority of e-book readers are those who already are passionate readers of conventional books.
To trigger a greater passion for books in the average person, bookstore owners have started to do more than just sell books.
We try to entice customers by organizing meetings with authors or by holding literature lectures.
Experts say a key way to restore an interest in reading is to encourage people to perceive it as a hobby that can be shared with other people. For example, at book cafes that promote reading as a culture of its own. Kwon So-ah, ARIRANG News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Park here with the latest weather forecast. After the rain from yesterday, most parts of the nation are slowly clearing up and the clouds are letting in the sun. However, the southern coast is expecting another 5 millimeters of bout of rain until tonight. Now, even with the rain from last night, dry weather continues to be an issue here. Now, currently there are warnings and advisories in effect nationwide, so be extra careful with fires, especially for those of you planning an outing over the weekend. Now, speaking of which, the weekend weather looks favorable for an outing with sunny skies and mild temperatures, except on Jeju Island, where a light rain is expected on Sunday morning. Now, with that in mind, let's take a look at the readings for today. Seoul will get up to 10 this afternoon, while Gwangju and Busan will get up at both at 12 degrees. Moving over to other regions, Jeju Island will get up to 16, Tokyo hits down to 7, while Hamkyong is a bit chillier at -2 degrees. Well, that's all for now. I'm Michelle Park, and here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
And that's a wrap from us at this hour. I'm Laah Hyun-kyung in Seoul. We'll be back with all of that and more at 6 p.m. Korea time.